Hello there. Saturday, and I think it's going to be the last thought for the day. I'm not sure. Certainly, I'm going away on holiday for a fortnight. And given the fact that we've been doing this for the better part of 4 months, and we've done one every day with the exception of Sundays when we've put out two services, I'm just saying, if you've managed to get through all of those, well done. I did not think that you would have stuck with the whole thing for that long. If I'm being honest, neither did I think I'd be doing them for this long. The fact is, it is just I'm glad I'm going on holiday. I'm glad I'm having a wee rest, but equally glad we've done this. Um, John Lennox, first of all, has given me a wee bit of affirmation. He makes references to Martin Luther and C.S. Lewis, and he's kind of touching base on things that I've already covered. So there's a certain kind of, I'm not a complete numpty. I did check in with the right Christians and the right theologians and the right pamphlets down through history. But he comes to this bit at the end, and as I said, as we've been going through the week, heed advice, maintain perspective, love your neighbour. The one that I'm not going to focus on too much, because I think again we have done it. Remember eternity. Keep things in perspective. When you have faith in Christ, you face every situation with the knowledge this is not the end. But when this is not the end, but it just seems to be a perpetual, never-ending difficulty, when pain and suffering is what the focus is here, when people have had truly horrendous things happen to them during Corona and during lockdown, what do you say? And he starts off with a very honest comment, and I just really identify with it. Who am I to write about such things? I'm painfully aware that some, perhaps many, will read these words and may well have lost a loved one recently. You may feel, what does he know about all of this? And I identify with that because at one level, people say, like we've discussed this at the beginning of the Kirk session, and folks are saying, well, do something each day, a kind of thought for the day. And that, I'm the obvious person to do that. But you also recognize nobody should do this. Nobody is qualified to talk about somebody else's suffering. Because, my dad died. That's it. That was tough. But I've never had any major illness. I've never been made unemployed. I've never lost a child. I've never got divorced. What right have I got to talk about people suffering? And so one of the things you realise, at least I've realised as I've reflected on these last few months, thoughts for the day have not focused hugely on what do you say to people who have got a huge amount of suffering in their life because of COVID. Because I feel, I have a certain trepidation about going into that. As in, who are you? What qualifications do you bring to come to any conversation and talk about suffering? And I'm willing to bet, if I were a betting person, I'm willing to bet most folks listening to this will say the same thing. I can't talk to somebody else if they've got real suffering in their life, or if they've suffered something specifically for COVID. And so what he does is the wise thing, and talk about people who do know what suffering is. I want to close by quoting from a remarkable book, I Choose Everything, written by Josanne Moss in South Africa and Michael Wenham in the UK. They describe their journey through pain. They were both suffering from a terminal illness, motor neuron disease, and have only met by email. Josanne likened the journey to climbing a mountain, and with a huge amount of honesty and courage, she writes about how God sustained her. I've been climbing my mountain for about 15 years, and most of those years were spent at the base camp, at the foot of the mountain, where I knew God was preparing me. I was always afraid to climb and thought that the base camp was my goal. I didn't think I'd be able to make it to the top, but God showed me through my illness that it wasn't about me or what I could do. It was always about Him. It is God who arms me with strength and makes the way perfect. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to stand on the heights. I finally left the base camp and started my ascent. God had chosen Everest for me. It definitely has not been easy, and my foot have often slipped. I've often been weary in it and been at times I didn't think I was going to get any further. Parts of this climb are very steep and far beyond anything I could achieve. But He continues to show me His power and strength, and when I'm tired, He is there. But those who hope in the Lord will be renewed in their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. My climb is nearly over. I think I'm nearer the summit of my mountain. The higher I climb, the higher climbers go, the closer they get to the summit, the harder it becomes to breathe. The oxygen levels decrease at altitude as the altitude increases, which causes climbers to suffer from altitude sickness. According to the internet, altitude sickness has symptoms of mild and moderate altitude sickness. Typically consists of headache, shortness of breath, sleeping trouble, loss of appetite, nausea, and rapid pulse. As the muscle, excuse me, that's just to give you a wee reminiscence of the opening weeks when all I did was cough. Probably spent more time coughing than I did time speaking. As the muscles of the body weaken through the progress of motor neuron disease, so too do the muscles necessary for breathing become weaker. I feel short of breath, have regular headaches, have trouble sleeping, and often experience a very rapid pulse. But it doesn't worry me because I know I'm nearly at the top of my mountain. The climb is becoming tough now, but I must press on. The reward that waits me when I complete the climb far outweighs any sacrifice one makes. Ask any mountain climber. So here I stand, looking up. The end is in sight and my heart races with excitement. I look forward to the day when I can say, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. John Lennox writes, 2 years after writing those words, Josanne, to use her image, climbed her mountain and reached the summit. I personally will avoid talking about it as a subject matter in Thought for the Day because I don't think I can do it credibly. I can't speak about suffering. I've observed it. I've seen how some families seem to be constantly being met with trial and challenge and difficulty and seem to do it with a smile on their face and cope incredibly well and maintain faith. I've seen others who, in my arrogance, I would suggest haven't really had that much to cope with, but still crumple. I don't think I can tell anybody in a Thought for the Day or anything else about how to cope and make sense of suffering in this world. What I know is that whether it's Martin Luther, whether it's C.S. Lewis, whether it's any of the preachers, or whether it's John Lennox, the fact is really simple. Down through history, Christians in the face of overwhelming suffering have always said the same thing. You must look at what happens here in the context of no pain is wasted, no challenge is unused. God does not give us suffering, but He redeems it and He uses it and He makes us into what He needs us to be, that we might be the tools in His hands in this generation, in this pandemic, to speak to people that can otherwise not be spoken to, because it is only in suffering that some people are reached. It's only hearing testimony of how people overcome challenge that some people will come to faith. It's not the erudition and abilities with words that will make the difference to the vast majority of people. It's individual Christians living out their Christian faith best they can. However you cope with the lockdown, and however you cope with the easing of lockdown and the re-engagement with everyday life, recognize that Christ is all. And when Paul says that Christ is everything, that to live is Christ and to die is gain, he says it because literally both ways I win. And when there is suffering here, you make sense of it best, not always necessarily without any concerns or worries or questions, but you make sense of it best when you look at Christ, hold on to Him as Peter did, getting out of the boat, focus on Him, and the suffering that you need to or go through can be given to Christ as an offering. Not because it makes Him better and happier to receive the suffering, but it means you get to know Him in a way that no other people do other than through suffering. I have not experienced that. I've only read about it in books, and as a consequence, it makes me hesitant to make it a big deal and a common, frequent aspect of these thoughts for the day. But it's what you consistently get in books. When God calls you to suffering, it just means you get you're not doing your O grades, you're not doing your hires, you're doing the advanced hire in what it means to know Christ. And when you know Him through your suffering, you know Him as well as any human being can. Until the next time, go with God, because I know He goes with you.